I came home early and walked into my own bedroom and found my wife with two men. What I did next destroyed everything she ever worked for. Stop scrolling for a second, because what I'm about to tell you isn't some internet drama cooked up for clicks. This isn't a story I heard from a friend of a friend. This happened to me. And there are still mornings where I wake up and can't fully believe that this is my actual life. My name is Mike. I'm 33. And up until a few weeks ago, I genuinely believed I had a solid marriage. Not perfect, nobody's is, but real. Built on trust, on respect, on the kind of quiet love that doesn't need to prove itself. But before I get into what happened, I want to ask you something. And I mean, actually ask, not just throw it out there as a hook and move on. What would you do if you came home and opened your bedroom door and there was your wife, the woman you trusted completely, the woman you sacrificed for, the woman you believed in more than anyone else in your life, with two men in your bed? Would you explode, freeze, walk away, and never look back? I'd thought about a lot of worst case scenarios in my marriage over the years. That one never made the list. Not once. So, let me take you back to the beginning, because without the full picture, none of what comes next makes any sense. I met Tracy at a movie theater. I was 31, she was 27. I'd gone to a premiere with some friends, she was there with her girls. One of those moments you'd roll your eyes at in a rom com. We caught each other across the lobby, started talking, and by the time the credits rolled, I already knew I wanted to see her again. We dated for about a year before I proposed. And honestly, that year felt like the easiest thing I'd ever done. She was funny, warm, sharp, the kind of person who walks into a room and somehow makes it feel lighter without even trying. I know that sounds like a line. It wasn't. When we got married, what I felt most was gratitude. Not possession, gratitude, like life had handed me something I wasn't sure I fully deserved, but I was going to protect it with everything I had. The first 2 years were everything you hope marriage is going to be. We argued about small stuff, dishes, bills, who was supposed to call the landlord, but nothing serious. Nothing that made me question us. Tracy was honest. Out of every quality she had, that was the one I valued most. She was a straight shooter. If something bothered her, she said it. No games, no passive aggression, no hidden meanings, just direct, real communication. She worked at a diner. I was a graphic designer. Banners, billboards, brand work. We both earned decent money, but I covered most of the household expenses because Tracy had a dream and I wanted to give her room to chase it. Before we got married, she told me about it. Since she was a little girl, she'd wanted to be an actress, not in a vague daydream kind of way, in a specific burning, this is who I am kind of way. Her parents had shut it down when she was young, told her it wasn't a real career, pushed her towards something practical in college. She listened to them, but she never let go of it. When she asked me, early in our marriage, whether I'd be okay with her pursuing acting on the side, I didn't hesitate for a single second. I said yes. Because I knew exactly what it felt like to want something badly and have nobody standing behind you. I wasn't going to be that person for her. I pushed her, actually. Helped her find auditions online, reminded her to apply when she wanted to give up, talked her through the rejections. We even had a long term plan. Once we'd saved enough, she'd enroll in a real theater academy. We put off having kids specifically because of that plan. I wanted her to have her shot first. And here's the thing, she was genuinely talented. Not, my wife is amazing bias. Objectively talented, she'd been watching acting tutorials for years before we even met, taken a few courses, and it showed. When she performed, something in her switched on. She came alive in a way she didn't anywhere else. I was proud of her. I was completely, fully in her corner. About a year and a half into the marriage, she finally got a response. A local theater production was holding auditions for new cast members, and they wanted her to come in. She was over the moon. I was right there with her. She got the part. And for a few weeks after that, everything was still fine. I didn't want to be the paranoid husband, so I stayed quiet. And that silence cost me everything. The first few weeks after she got the role, nothing really changed. We talked normally, lived normally. The only difference was that weekends now belonged to rehearsals. She'd wake up, clean, cook, head out, and come back late in the evening. I didn't love the new arrangement, but I kept my mouth shut. This was her first real shot. I wasn't going to be the one who suffocated it. Besides, they paid her more for a single weekend than she made in a full work week. So I filled the time with video games, friends coming over, the usual, told myself the distance was temporary, that things would even out once she settled in. They didn't even out. The distance kept growing, and it wasn't just physical. Before all this, she used to come home from rehearsals like a kid on Christmas, eyes lit up, spilling details, telling me about every single person on the team by name. I knew what the director looked like, what her scene partner's personality was like, who wasn't getting along behind the scenes. All of it because Tracy shared everything with me, and then one day that just stopped. She'd come home and go quiet. Not angrily, not dramatically, just empty. Like the part of her that used to reach toward me had packed up and moved somewhere I couldn't find it. Then came the defensiveness. She started taking offense at jokes that used to make her laugh, treated normal questions like interrogations. I'd ask how rehearsal went and get either a one word answer or a look that made me feel like I'd said something wrong without knowing what it was. Then the wardrobe changed. New dresses started appearing, ones she wore exclusively to rehearsals, revealing in a way that made me uncomfortable. I said something about it a couple of times. She brushed me off, said it was just fashion, that I didn't understand the creative world she was now part of. I told myself she just wanted to fit in. She'd always been competitive about clothes. I wasn't going to make a whole thing out of a dress. Then came the weekly hair changes, the constant phone calls with some guy she introduced as her scene partner, long, hushed conversations in the other room that stopped the moment I walked in. I kept telling myself the same thing over and over: don't be that husband, not the one who monitors every step, not the one who starts a fight over a new outfit. And then she did something that crossed a line I hadn't known existed until she crossed it. I said something, calmly, no yelling, no accusations, just expressed how it made me feel. And she screamed at me, grabbed her things, walked out. That had never happened before, not once in our entire relationship. I sat in that living room for a long time after the door closed. Later that night, some friends came over. I told them what had been going on, and they didn't dance around it the way I'd been doing for weeks. Eric said it straight. She's cheating on you, Mike. I pushed back hard, told them they didn't know Tracy, that there had to be another explanation. They let me finish. And then Eric said quieter, you're not seeing it because you don't want to. If you actually want to know the truth, hire someone. A private investigator. The idea felt wrong to me. Invasive. Like something people did when they'd already given up on trust entirely. But the alternative? Living in that fog, lying awake at 2 a.m., running through the same scenarios, felt even worse. I agreed, found someone online, hired him for 7 days. 3 days in, Tracy didn't come home after rehearsal. I called. Nothing. Called again. Nothing. By 3 a.m., she finally picked up, relaxed, slightly breathless, and told me she couldn't hear her phone over the music at some birthday party for one of the actresses. Said she was staying at a nearby hotel. I told you about this, she said. You just don't listen. She had told me nothing. I knew that with complete certainty. But I didn't argue, because the investigator had been watching her all night. A few days later, the investigator called. He had something to show me. I went directly to him instead of going home. What he showed me gutted me completely: photos, video, timestamps. Tracy and a blonde guy kissing in her car, walking through a mall, having dinner together, easy and comfortable, like a couple who'd been together for a while, and footage from the night of the supposed birthday party. She left the club with him around 10 p.m. and didn't come back until morning. She had seen every single one of my calls, she just chose not to answer. I sat across from that investigator and couldn't speak. I had given that woman everything. I had restructured my entire life around her dream. And she had been living a completely different life behind my back. Then the investigator said something that made my blood run cold. She's at your house right now. With him. I couldn't drive. My hands were shaking too badly. The investigator drove me himself. I opened the bedroom door there, and my life split into before and after. When we pulled up to the house, I saw it immediately, the blue Toyota, the same one from every single photo, sitting in my driveway like it had every right to be there. I don't fully remember getting out of the car, don't remember walking to the front door. Somewhere in the back of my mind, there was still a small, stubborn voice saying, maybe there's an explanation. Maybe there's some version of this that makes sense. There wasn't. I opened the bedroom door. Tracy was there, and not with one man, with two. I'm not going to describe what I saw in detail. You understand what I walked in on. What I will tell you is what happened inside me in that moment. It wasn't rage, not at first. What came first was something quieter and more devastating than rage. The feeling of something permanent breaking, like a sound you can never unhear, like a door slamming shut forever on a version of your life you're never getting back. And then the rage came. I went for the blond guy first. The other one grabbed his clothes and bolted out of that room so fast he was practically a blur. The investigator had followed me in and physically pulled me back. And honestly, if he hadn't been standing right there, I don't know what would have happened. I was not in a place where rational thought existed. Tracy was still on the bed, hands cuffed to the frame, looking at me with an expression I will never forget for as long as I live. And then she spoke. You don't understand. We were rehearsing a scene from the play. A scene, rehearsing. I walked out of that room, told her to be gone by the time I got back. Didn't look at her again on my way out. The investigator had recorded everything. He handed me the footage. I spent that night at a friend's place, didn't sleep, just sat with what I now knew, turning it over and over like maybe it would feel different the next time I looked at it. It never did. When I went back the next morning, she was still there, still in my house, still, and I want you to really understand how this landed, had the nerve to be standing in my kitchen asking me to hear her out. I didn't hear her out. I packed her things myself, carried them out to the front lawn, and told her to leave. She stood outside for nearly an hour, crying, screaming my name, begging me to open the door. When the tears didn't work, she switched, started calling me names, telling me I was making the biggest mistake of my life. Then she left. I sat in that empty house and thought about one thing. She had taken something from me that I couldn't get back. Years of trust, years of showing up, years of choosing her dream as seriously as my own, more seriously, actually, because I had quietly set mine aside to make room for hers. She used every bit of that room to build a secret life. And now I had the footage. I wasn't done, not even close. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I just waited. And then I burned it all down. The calls started almost immediately after she left. Every day, sometimes multiple times, from different numbers when I stopped picking up the familiar ones. Voicemails I deleted without listening to, texts I read once and never responded to. And while she was doing all of that, while she was leaving messages about our promises and our future and everything we'd built together, I was quietly working on something else entirely. One of my friends had done some digging, and what he found stopped me cold. The second man in that bedroom, the one who grabbed his clothes and ran, was currently in a relationship with Tracy's director. Let that land for a second. The man my wife brought into our home, into our bed, was the boyfriend of the person who controlled her entire career. The same director who had given her the role she'd fought for, the same production she had used as the justification for every single thing that had gone wrong between us. It took me 2 weeks to track the director down online. He was newer to the industry, just starting to build a name for himself, but already showing real promise. Well connected. The kind of person whose opinion in those circles actually carried weight. I reached out, told him I had something he needed to see. He agreed to meet. When we sat down, I didn't waste either of our time. No long setup. I opened my phone and showed him the footage. He watched it in complete silence. And then he broke down. Right there in front of me, this grown man started crying. He said he'd had suspicions about his boyfriend for a while, that the guy had cheated before, but he'd forgiven him, believed him when he swore it was a one time mistake that would never happen again. He trusted him. Sound familiar? When he pulled himself together enough to speak, he asked what I expected him to do. I told him his relationship was entirely his business, but letting Tracy walk away from this without any consequences would be a choice he'd have to live with. He didn't need much convincing. Within days, Tracy was removed from the production. The blonde guy was gone too. Months of rehearsals, the role she'd auditioned for and bragged about, everything she had used as justification for blowing up our marriage, gone. Just like that. I won't pretend I felt nothing when I found out. I felt everything, and most of it felt like justice. I wanted her to understand, not just intellectually but deep in her gut, what it actually feels like to pour yourself into something completely, to sacrifice for it, to finally believe it's working, and then to lose all of it because of someone else's selfish choices. That's exactly what she had done to me. Now she got to feel it too. She called the day the divorce papers arrived. She begged me not to go through with it, said we'd built too much together to throw it away, that she was sorry, that she'd do anything. I told her she destroyed it the moment she decided to betray me, not when I caught her before that. The decision happened long before I ever opened that bedroom door. And then I told her it was me who showed the director the video. The apologies stopped immediately. She went cold, accused me of being jealous, said I'd always resented her for chasing her dream while I gave up on mine. I laughed because I recognized exactly what it was, a last desperate attempt to rewrite the story, to cast herself as the victim of my bitterness instead of the author of her own downfall. I hung up. 2 weeks later, she signed the papers. I'm writing this as a divorced man, 33 years old, starting over from a place I never expected to be standing. Does it hurt? Yes. Genuinely, yes. There are mornings where I wake up and for about 3 seconds everything feels normal, and then it all comes back at once, and those 3 seconds feel like the cruelest part of the whole thing. But here's what else is true. I don't regret a single decision I made after I found out. Not the investigator, not the confrontation, not the footage, not the director, not the divorce. Every one of those choices was a direct response to what she chose to do first. I was a good husband. I know that in my bones. Not perfect. Nobody is. But I showed up. Consistently. I believed in her when nobody else did. I rearranged my entire life to make room for her dreams. She used that space to build a secret life behind my back. Loyalty means nothing to someone who isn't loyal back. Love alone is not enough to protect you from someone who has already decided they want something else. And trust, once genuinely broken, doesn't really come back, no matter how many tears get cried on your front porch. I don't hate Tracy, but I am done carrying something she dropped a long time ago. If this story hit you somewhere you weren't expecting, drop a comment below. Tell me what you would have done differently. Tell me if you think I went too far. Tell me if you've been through something like this yourself and what it cost you. Because one of the things I've learned from sharing all of this is that far more people have stood exactly where I was standing than anyone ever admits out loud. More than you'd think. More than most people are comfortable saying in public, you are not alone in it. And if you're currently in that fog right now, suspicious, confused, telling yourself you're probably just being paranoid, trust what you're feeling. Not because betrayal is inevitable, but because your instincts are almost always smarter than your hope. If this resonated with you, hit the like button. Subscribe if you want to hear the next story, because this was only the first one, and I'll see you in the comments.